1K subscription MRR, 10 million valuation. How? Our guest today is Nisheeth Pathak, the CEO and co-founder of WeSoar, an AI employee engagement SaaS product. He's been able to recruit senior advisors, open doors to Fortune 500 enterprise partners, and secured 200,000 funding at an impressive 10 million valuation with only 1K subscription MRR and very lean development cost and operational efficiency. Nisheeth, you are a very inspiring product income maker. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Had. Nice to be here.
Nishi, let's talk about discovering customer pain first. Through consulting to big enterprises, you've been able to identify unique pains that aren't being solved using other employee engagement tools. What are those pains and how did you discover them?
A lot of it came from listening. And I think that's one thing that I would strongly recommend anyone who's going to try to solve a pain point to do is to listen more and talk less. We spoke a lot with end users of different personas, identified what is it that they are looking for, what is stopping them from reaching their peak potential. And one kind of insight after another led to this realization that there is a lot to be still done. When we talk about the way people work, in most organizations, they succeed in spite of HR processes, not necessarily because of them. The processes are completely devoid of connect to their day-to-day workflows.
Give me an example. What did you discover that is unique and differentiated from what they're able to access through other tools in the marketplace today?
When it comes to performance management, most managers do not manage their teams according to the HR cycle of set goals once in a year, do a midterm after 6 months, and then come back and do a final assessment at the end of the year. Most managers manage their teams on a real time, ongoing basis. And that's why they see this extra step that HR asks them to do as something of a redundancy and something that is a non-value add, because that's not the way anyone leads their team. There's a very clear disconnect between the way the work is being done versus the way the HR process has been configured. That's one example where managers think that there is no value or there's no additional value they get from filling out the forms that HR asks them to do. The value is for HR because they are completing a process from a compliance point of view and it's documented. But from a manager and employee point of view, it's not necessarily adding a lot of extra value. The second thing is about employee engagement. When organizations do these surveys, they ask their managers to create action plans. Templates get circulated or an online tool is given to the managers to create an action plan. And there's constant pressure that the organization and HR put on the managers to complete the action plan. The action plan is completed because everyone wants this off their list and people off their back. But eventually, in a lot of organizations, managers don't go forward and complete that part of the process beyond action planning. And that's where the missing big link is. It's not enough to create an action plan. You've actually got to take action to show results. That's again a second area where we found out that there is a broken link between what we ask people to do and what the desired end result should be.
And how will your product reach that gap between an action plan and the result that needs to be achieved? And how would you productize it? Because that seems like something that usually you would enforce through consulting. And that's why I believe you've been able to be successful engaging these enterprises through consulting as well. But how would a product do that successfully?
What we are working with is a relatively new concept called the nudge. It comes from the nudge theory, which was basically a Nobel Prize winning framework in economics. It's been around for a few decades. It's been used successfully by governments. It's been used by marketing departments to change consumer behavior. But in HR, to change employee behavior is still a relatively new thing and it's not being fully utilized. One, we want to move away from action planning into more like a nudge framework so that people get nudged on what to do. The second thing is about productization, and that happens through AI. Initially, what we do are basically the supervised nudges, which follow an if then kind of a condition. It's not very intelligent initially because it has to kind of follow some logical architecture rather than an artificially intelligent architecture. But once we get enough data and once there is a machine learning cycle that kicks in, then we get into unsupervised nudges, which is where AI understands what type of nudge to send at what point of time, understanding the preferences of different people. These preferences include things like what time of the day is the best time to receive a nudge. if I start my day super busy at 9 a.m. and if I get a nudge at 9:30, I'm going to dismiss it because I've got other things to do. To get into personalization, to understand when is the best time for you to receive this nudge, what's the best frequency for you to receive this nudge. I may say, give me a nudge every 1 week, and you may say, I want something every 3 days. And those could be things that could be configured or personalized through AI. One is use AI to personalize so that there's no one size fits all approach. And the second is to make it intelligent using machine learning so that the quality of nudge also improves over a period of time, which is very different from the old world where a consultant used to stand in front of a group of people in a conference room and help them do it one time. And then they would be wedded to that plan for the next 1 year.
Let's move to distributions. How are you able to recruit those large enterprise partners? I learned from you that you've recruited some senior advisors that perhaps were able to be helpful to open the doors. And overall, if I understand correctly, just for people to understand the ballpark we're talking about, you are now making around $15,000 per month on consulting or 14 and $1,000 on the subscription. How are you able to recruit those large enterprises?
Yeah, that 1000 MRR has now gone to
Amazing.
10,000 MRR.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But again, the fact is that we work on a partnership basis. Some of the partners that we are talking about are consulting firms, and consulting firms could be established ones, especially in the regions that we work with. There is a respectable consulting firm called Protivity, which is quite popular in the Middle East and India. We work with them and they kind of open doors for us through our partnership. We are working closely with PwC. And on the technology side, we are working with Oracle as part of the startup program. We are trying to see how our innovation can be matched to Oracle scale. We are also started working informally with SAP, where we are trying to get into a formal agreement with them. But the whole idea that we have is we can't solve all the problems ourselves. We need to take an alliance and a partnership along with us. It's not one superhero, it's the whole Marvel cinematic universe that needs to come along to solve these bigger problems. And we are happy being part of that solution rather than being the solution, the full solution ourselves. And there is a V in our name. So we don't want to do everything, and we realize we can't do everything on our own. It's that spirit of collaboration and partnership, which is an important thing because I don't see Oracle and SAP as competition. I see them as collaborators. I see Microsoft as a collaborator. I see Workday as a collaborator. The idea is that when we prove our innovation to these partners and they see value in the innovation, getting scale after that is very easy. SAP, for example, has over 100 enterprise customers with 100,000 plus employees. So to get one of those could take a long time through the partnership. But imagine getting a client base of 100,000 employees using the SMB model. You're talking about 1,000 or 10,000 companies that you need to have in your client base. The whole kind of complexity of managing that, the product sophistication has to go down substantially in order to cater to the SMB segment. We are going through the partnership route, and our kind of financial model is that if we get about 180 customers in 6 years, so that's talking about 30 customers in a year from the partnership network. With an average headcount of about 10,000, we are talking about 100K ARR, 100 million ARR. Each partner would bring in about 60 enterprises over 6 years. 10 enterprises in a year, gradually scaling up, obviously not straight line, but initially we start with maybe 3 customer referrals, gradually ramping it up to about 18 customer referrals or 60 customer referrals over a period of time per year. We are talking about just 1.5% of the client base of Oracle, SAP, and Workday put together. That could bring us 100 million ARR.
So you're assuming what's the average revenue that you're assuming per enterprise client?
So our assumption is about 10,000 employees at the outer limit in 6 years at a $5 per user per month price point. Initially, we are targeting more in the 2,000 to 5,000 headcount because we want to ramp up our client base as we become more and more confident of providing them the 7-star service that we currently do. So our clients would vouch for our 7-star service, not even 5-star. And that's something we don't want to compromise on. And we believe that we don't want to grow too fast. so that our service standards fall. So the plan is we start with 2,000, gradually ramp up to 10,000, typically at a $5 per user per month price point.
So you're looking at an average of $500,000 per enterprise client per year.
Correct. The first enterprise customer that we are talking about, we have a 3-year contract with them, and it's about 125K annual going all the way up. If you take a 3-year horizon, we are talking about $500,000 already from our first enterprise customer.
Amazing. Think about the cost of acquiring such an enterprise, a client, which eventually might become very efficient once you have those partners, clearly. But what are you looking at the entire onboarding cycle and all the time it takes to onboard such an enterprise? What will be the ballpark cost of acquiring such an enterprise customer?
Yeah, in terms of the cost, our budget is around 10% of the contract value, which could be spent towards promotions, marketing, channel partner commissions, and so on. But 10% on an average is what we are working towards as the client acquisition cost. Doesn't include my time, doesn't include my co-founder's time. And I understand that's a significant part of the process, but that's an early investment that we are making. We don't have anyone in sales. We have 0 salespeople. So far, we have spent 0 on marketing. Everything we've got is word of mouth, publicity, walk-ins following referrals, and partner recommendations.
Amazing. So that would be 10-time ratio of yearly average annual contract over the cost. So you would basically recover that cost within 1 or 2 months of signing that customer. That will be an amazing LTV to CAC ratio.
1.5 months. And a lot of this comes from my previous experience in banking, where if you were to talk about the companies that I've worked in, the management team would just track one number, which is net profit. I'm still considering myself new in the whole world of technology and SaaS and software. And when I hear people talk about not breaking even for 8 years or 10 years and constantly losing hundreds of millions of dollars, I just don't get it. In my personal view, we are not running an enterprise or a business to generate losses. We are running a business to generate profits and share it with the people who've invested in us. That one-off benefit or one-off windfall that comes when you sell your business or IPO or exit by any other means, that's a long shot. I want the investors to start benefiting much earlier than that.
That's a great approach, which is much more profitable and much more economically healthy. And let's take just one step back. How were you able to secure and recruit those partners from the very beginning? What made you so appealing to them to open the door and give you the potential access to their partners?
I think we have an amazing story. The fact that we are trying to solve a very complex problem, which is, in one word, fulfillment. That is something that appeals to a lot of people. And the people we've had the fortune of recruiting as our advisory board members or people who work with us in an extended kind of an ecosystem, they are all super experienced people. We would never ever have the ability or the affordability to hire them full time. So I think they are bought into the story that we are trying to create and the problem we are trying to solve. I've been persistent, I've been stubborn, and I've told them that I want them. And I'm prepared to wait it out till they get approvals from their companies in order to make it a normal way of coming as an advisory board rather than just a small side thing. So these are all people who are on the advisory board in an official capacity, having told their organizations that they're taking up an additional assignment. But I think the one thing that excites people is the story that we have.
Let's talk about one of your amazing competitive differentiation, which is the low cost of development that you've been able to have, where I believe you mentioned you're paying around $30,000 for a developer. I believe in a dedicated place in India, while even your competitors, even in India, are paying $100,000 for a senior developer. So do you think this gap will close? Do you think different places in India, developers there might want to charge more over the long term, or either companies might get to these places and hire them as well in order to enjoy this arbitrage?
I think it's a little bit of a mindset. So when I go recruit people, I don't look at their CV. I don't look at which college they graduated from. And unfortunately, or the way it is, that's a very common and established way of recruiting in India. So a lot of companies go to what are called the premier engineering colleges and institutions, which are very difficult to get in. So admission is very difficult for candidates and students to secure. But once they get in the college, their value increases exponentially and they become very expensive. So $100,000 for a senior engineer coming from one of those colleges is very common. It's not a big deal. I don't look at the name of the college at all. So when I recruit, I don't even read the CV. I make a conscious attempt to not read the CV. We do a machine test. So every software developer who we hire has to go through a machine test. If they are successful in that machine test, it tells us that they will be able to do their job. We are not looking for people who are fluent in English or people who come from a very well off background. In fact, a lot of people who work with us, their families have never owned a car. So we are hiring people who have the fire in the belly, people who come maybe from a disadvantaged background, and people who are not necessarily coming from very high profile colleges or very high profile previous organizations. So we haven't hired from Infosys or TCS or any of these companies. We hire people from service companies where typically an engineer works on 6 to 10 projects in a year, but that gives them that kind of versatility and the breadth of experience that they are able to adapt to the requirements that we have. So we are hiring people for potential. We are hiring people for hunger. We are hiring people for what they can do with assistance and guidance rather than people who've already achieved a lot in life and now come with a higher price tag.
Let's talk about overcoming challenges. Can you share the biggest challenges that you faced on your entrepreneurial journey?
There is a challenge every day. Those you've been an entrepreneur, you would know. But a lot of people think that it's a very cool life that the entrepreneurs lead and they are living their dream and they're chasing greatness and success. Deep in the trenches, it's anything but that. So there are challenges that come along every day. You are rejected by VCs, you're rejected by candidates, you're rejected by customers. You face rejection every day. So I think one of the things that is very important that I have figured out is you need to have a thick skin and just shrug it off and move on. I've had candidates who pulled out at the last minute because they were not familiar with our brand name and they thought joining a startup was a risk. And I tell them that Lehman Brothers failed as well and they were not a startup. So risk is a very different thing, but it's fine. You can't change everyone's mind. We've had VCs who pass us because they think it's a crowded space without even going into the details of how we are different from other people. And I understand you get 100 decks a day that you have to review. You don't have the time to go into that, and that's fine. So every VC who passes us is fine. We thank them for whatever few seconds they have spent on us. But I think the biggest challenge and also the opportunity we faced was COVID. So imagine you start off your business on 1st of January 2020. You make your first offer on 1st of March 2020, and in 3 weeks you go into a lockdown. And then we had to recruit and build our team, the first team of 10 people, 10 software developers who had never worked with each other before and all working remotely in a place where infrastructure may not be the best.
So, what are your keys to sustaining those challenges on a personal level? What are you saying to yourself? What are you saying to your team members? How are you overcoming those challenges?
So I think the most important thing is conviction. Do I believe that we are on the right path? So when I moved into entrepreneurship, I came from the absolute peak of my professional career. I had the choice of hanging in there for a few more years, making a ton of money. I was working in Dubai, tax-free salaries, in banking. I was a high performer, so obviously I was earning a lot of money in my corporate career, which helped me save money on the side so that I could sustain the family side and the expenses for 3 to 4 years with zero income. And I haven't taken salaries since August of 2019. So I've gone 3 years without salaries and I've been able to do that. If at any point of time I was not convinced that this is the right thing for me to do and for my family to go through, I would have dropped the ball and gone back into a job. The first thing I would have done. It takes time to build a business. My dad says you need 1,000 days for the tree to feel safe. And we are getting towards the fag end of the 1,000 days. And I see hope now. I see the fact that we've survived for 2 years is a good sign. The fact that we are in our third year and we are starting to get some interest from enterprises is a good sign. It's far from over, but at least we see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think the most important thing is conviction. Do we believe we are doing the right thing? Are we in here for the right reasons? Am I here to sell the company off in 2 years and make some money and retire at a beach? No, I'm here because there is a big problem that I see people face, which I think I can play a small role in alleviating. So people who work in organizations are not happy, they're not engaged, they don't lead fulfilling lives. So can I make their lives a little bit better? Can I bring happiness and can I bring success and can I bring fulfillment into their lives by helping them work in a slightly better way, by working smarter? So those are things that pull you along, and it's something that is long term. It is something that requires conviction. You need that belief within you that you're doing the right thing. That's the most important part.
So I believe that level of conviction was what helped you to secure more funding. I know you've invested around 300,000 in your own venture and then bring along another 200,000 from angel investors at a very impressive valuation of $10 million. And with only proving a $1,000 per month or so from early subscription revenue. So I believe that was the conviction that persuaded investors, or was there anything else that allowed you to secure that?
I think people believed me. When I say something with sincerity and with the knowledge that I know how to solve this problem, people believed me. It takes much longer to build an Airbus A380 than it takes to build a chopper. The chopper can be off the ground before you realize. The A380 is still under production. It keeps getting built. But when it takes off for a long distance. And I think we want to build an Airbus A380 rather than build a chopper. It takes time for you to gather momentum. You need a longer runway. You need the patience that all the work that has been going on and the plane is still not finished. No, it's a bigger plane. It takes time. It's a bigger problem that we are trying to solve. But when we take off, and I say when we take off because I definitely believe we are on the runway right now. So when we take off, it will make a comfortable and long flight.
So, what are your recommendations for other entrepreneurs in terms of tools and books and blogs in order to follow a similar, comparable journey to the path that you're following?
I think the one thing that makes the biggest difference is having the community of similar people who are in your similar situation, people who you can directly learn from. Those who've written books have gone far ahead of you. Right now, you need the understanding and the empathy and the general understanding that someone can bring in who's just a little bit ahead of you, who still remembers the pain that you went through 6 months or 1 year ago. So, that community, I wouldn't say mentoring or coaching or anything, but just that community of people around. So being a founder is a very lonely thing. And I'll tell you, I had 17 people in my own team in HR in my last job. The broader HR team was about 35 to 40 people. We had a couple of thousand people working in the company. It was a very different thing where you could confide in people, talk to people, get opinions and all of that. When you're a founder, when you're working in a team of 2 or 3 or 5 or 7, that opportunity isn't there. So I would think that it makes a lot of sense to reach out to fellow founders through communities and through accelerator programs that you get introduced to and get insights and help from them, because those are people who've just about managed to clear the hurdles that you are standing at.
So, any particular YouTubes or TED Talks or other things that you would recommend or tools that you vouch for?
I'll go back to the book. So there is a book which I really liked and it shaped my thinking. And that book is The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. So the Black Swan event is something that you can benefit from. You don't actually have to lose from it. So how do you prepare yourself for that Black Swan event is something important. There's another book which is not technically a recent phenomenon. It's a few thousand years old, which is the Bhagavad Gita, which is something kind of fountainhead of knowledge and truth in the religion that we follow. And that is a lot of clarity about the purpose of your life. That whole book was written to show the purpose of your life. I follow a number of people who are management gurus and people who speak a lot of sense, people like Simon Sinek, Adam Grant. Recently, I met a professor from Columbia, Hitendra Wadhwa. So I follow the work that they do, and things they say make a lot of sense. So comes in bite-sized. You don't have to worry about reading 200 pages overnight, and that may not be everyone's preferred way of gaining knowledge to
What about
discover it.
tools? Which online tools would you recommend?
As a company, we use two tools primarily. One is for a CRM, and we use HubSpot. Very easy to use, fantastic tool, something that has inspired our own product development because of the clarity and the user experience that it provides. The second tool we use is Freshdesk. which is Freshworks product, very similar to HubSpot, easy to use, easy to install. Both of these tools don't cost a lot, but they help you get your job done very well.
Great. Last piece, let's talk about opportunities for you. So, in terms of either sales leads or acquisitions, what would you look in the world? How much would you pay for a qualified enterprise lead? Or what would you look for in terms of acquiring, perhaps effectively and cost efficiently, other products, if at all?
Yeah, getting leads is important, but again, we want to currently work with a few set of companies. We don't want to work with 200 companies today. Our goal is to work in 2022 and 23 with a maximum of 10 enterprise customers. The 11th one will be on the waiting list. So it's important that we decide what we want to work with. In terms of leads, they're always welcome. And we have this kind of partnership model, the introduction kind of framework that we have with a number of companies where we are happy to share revenue. So we don't work on a fixed cost basis. So we don't work on X dollars per lead model, but we work on a co-sell model where if we are able to sell together, we work on a percentage of revenue, which is uncapped. So we sell a $1 million lead, you get X percentage of that $1 million. So we work on a variable cost model, uncapped, like a commission program.
Well, can you share the ballpark of the revenue share that you're willing to give to partners?
It works from 2% to 10% depending on the extent of involvement. So if it is just an introduction and nothing else, it is in the 2% range. But if it is co-sell, which is where we are selling it together, so basically your client, my product, let's sell together, that goes up to 10%.
Understood. And acquisitions, is it something that crosses your mind in terms of product?
Not acquisitions, but partnerships. Something that we are always open for. Products that are upstream, downstream, complementary. We are always willing to get into a partnership with them. So whether it is an HRMS company, which has a strong local or regional presence, but it doesn't have a very strong performance module or doesn't offer engagement surveys. So it's a good complementary fit. And there are lots of those. There are lots of smaller HRMS providers, which we would be very happy to partner with. We could also partner with companies that offer specialized solutions like psychometric assessments, because that's adjacent to our space. Companies that provide coaching, because that's again adjacent to our space. So anything that is adjacent or complementary, we are happy to get into a partnership with them.
So, in nudges, an AI recommendation approach to employee engagement secured your first enterprise customer. Congratulations, now making $10,000 monthly recurring revenue from one customer, and hopefully many more to come from huge partners such as Oracle and SAP and others, aiming to make $500,000 per enterprise customer per 3 years and have the patience to play the long game. Nisheeth, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Ad.